Can everyone hear me all right? Okay. First, I wanted to say thank you for inviting me here today. I am excited to be in Georgia, and I wanted to share with everyone today a little bit about what we've been doing in Mississippi. So first, I wanted to touch on the various landscapes that we have in Mississippi. Like most states, it varies widely from corner to corner. We have the Delta, of course, which is along the Mississippi River, and then we have the Gulf Coast, and then we also have the very tip of the Appalachian Mountains, and so it definitely varies north to south of the state. So that also speaks to the fact that various institutions will be susceptible to different natural disasters. And of course, they vary from tornadoes to hurricanes to floods, and we've pretty much had all of those at one time or another, sometimes all in the same year. Of course, Katrina. Many of you are familiar with it. I don't have to tell you about what it was, but what it did do is redefine disaster response in the state of Mississippi and other states as well. For example, before Katrina, institutions would have, say, a backup file at an institution that may have been 30 minutes down the road, because that was seen as the ideal. That was all you had to really do. Post-Katrina, pretty much everything that was around you, all the cities that were around you were also affected. So having something, a backup 30 minutes away, even 2 hours away, was no longer acceptable. It had to be almost 4 or 5 states away, because even in Mississippi, Alabama was affected, Louisiana was affected. You couldn't have things just at your neighbor's house. So it really, really redefined disaster preparedness for us in Mississippi. And part of that was actually having workshops. And one of the workshops that we had, well, I'll mention several, but one of them was actually the Regional Emergency Response Network that was created. And it 4 different states make up that emergency response network. And Mississippi is one of them. And so the workshop that was actually held was actually 4 different workshops, and 2 of them were online workshops, and then 2 of them were in person. And the online workshops were 2-hour length workshops. And so that allowed people to actually not have to travel, so that was extremely helpful. And then the 2 in-person workshops were actually held in Starkville, Mississippi, at Mississippi State University. And that was really convenient for somebody like me, which Starkville is only about 20 minutes from Columbus, which is where I live. So I'm sure that's actually why they held it there for me. So, but it was actually a collaborative. It was sponsored through the Mississippi Department of Archives and History, the Society of Mississippi Archivists, Mississippi Library Commission, and LYRASIS. And all of those organizations got together to host this so that post-Katrina, we all would be better prepared for a disaster of that magnitude in the future. So what did we do at the workshop? We actually touched on several different things, actually. We reviewed our disaster plans, if we even had them. A lot of institutions didn't even have a disaster plan. They were just crossing their fingers. Good luck. And then we also, talked about different grants and collaboration. One of the things that I'll touch on in a second, but these workshops allowed us to meet other individuals from other institutions that we may not have ever met before. And so that was really, really helpful. Another thing that we did was actually had hands-on training. We broke into groups, and actually, this is a picture of, I don't know if this, yeah, here we go. I'm not used to little green lights. So this is a picture of one of the groups that I was in. This is also an individual from my institution, Barnell. And then this is actually Forrest. She's from the State Archives in Mississippi. But they were really, really great about creating an environment of examples that we could actually see in our own institutions. For example, what happens if a pipe bursts? You know, it didn't have to be a huge natural disaster. It could be an internal disaster, a pipe bursting, a window busting, and, you know, rain getting inside, or anything like that that could happen on a local level versus a larger natural disaster. So let me show you the next picture. This is actually a picture of me. These look like nice little books, but actually they were hosed down in water. So, and as many of you know, what happens to paper when it gets wet, it expands. And so it was my job to try to get those suckers off the shelf, which was not fun. But I will say, if you do plan on doing anything like this kind of hands-on training, I would definitely alert, because this was on the campus of Mississippi State, I would alert everyone, because people were walking by and they were like, oh my God, what is the library doing? They're hosing all their books down. So there was a little bit of panic from the general public. But luckily, you know, we kind of let everybody know it was okay, and these were just discards anyway. But as I mentioned, you know, these types of workshops allowed us, because it was such an intensive workshop, it wasn't necessarily an hour or 2 hours. It was 2 online workshops and 2 in-person workshops. It was intensive. This really was in-depth, and it allowed us to walk away with a feeling of confidence so that we could actually handle a disaster if we needed to at our own institutions. And as I mentioned also, we met individuals from around the state so that I know that I can contact those people if I need to in the future. And another great thing that actually came out of it was the RERN listserv. And that actually connects all the 4 states that are members of the network. And it's been really helpful to see, I mean, even like when Sandy hit, the flooding occurred in the Delta, like all of these different things now connect all of those states so that if, you know, we need advice, if we need to send help, anything like that, we can do that through that listserv. So another thing that actually we're doing that I'm not actually a member of, but it's in the Delta, and it is the Mississippi Delta Cooperative for Heritage Preservation. And what that is you can see the collaborative here, and it was actually a grant received from the National Endowment for the Humanities back in 2010. And the $6,000 that they received actually went towards, there we go, it went towards holding workshops, and it also went towards purchasing materials, any kind of disaster response supplies that they may have needed. And what they actually do is, between those collaborative institutions, they may hold those supplies at one place, but all of them have access to it if they need it. So they may bring them from place to place. And so that way that also helps, you know, everyone is tight on money. Every institution is, you know, looking under couch cushions for pennies. So that really helps them share in the cost of something like that. And there's actually something called the Archival Training Collaborative. It's Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana. And what the collaborative does is actually host workshops. And so the Delta Collaborative has brought in the Archival Training Collaborative to host workshops in their area specifically so that they could get better trained on disaster response. So obviously the positives are that these collaboratives offer a peace of mind. And they also provide those resources locally rather than having to have just one institution have them. It's shared among all of them. One of the difficulties, of course, with any collaborative is finding the time to meet. Even if they are in the same general region, they still have difficulty because a lot of these institutions that I mentioned are one-person shops. You know, they may only have one person on staff that's the full-time person, and then they can't necessarily get away all the time to come to meetings and things like that. So that's the difficulty in that. Another workshop that we've had a lot, is the Connecting to Collections. And that was actually a preservation conference that was held in Jackson back in January 25th, 2012. And that was funded through the Institute of Museum and Library Services and the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. And what that was literally like a conference. And so you came just for a one-day conference, and there were 2 concurrent sessions, and you got to choose whichever one you went to for that day. And basically touched on things like funding, because those are always the biggies. You know, you want to know where you can get funding for such things, grants, and how to prepare and react to disasters on any level. So the other thing that we've actually done in Mississippi is we sent Jennifer Brannick, who's the archivist at the University of Southern Mississippi, to Texas back in 2011, to the American Institute for Conservation of Historic and Artistic Works Collections Emergency Response Training Program. Definitely had to write that down. Woo. And she actually attended training, brought that knowledge back to us in Mississippi, and has since actually become the member of the Society of Mississippi Archivists, who is the disaster response representative. So if anyone contacts the Society of Mississippi Archivists, we can turn to her, and she can work on trying to get things implemented, and where do we need to go for this or that type of thing. And she's sort of our to-go person. And that's really, really helpful to have somebody like that in your state organization, archival organization, society. And these are just a few of the things that Jennifer's actually been able to do since her training. She definitely publicizes through the Society of Mississippi Archivists listserv any kind of opportunities that come up and the activities of the AIC. And then about a year ago, there was some major flooding in the Delta. Go figure. Flooding in the Delta. So after the flooding, she was able to send out emails and just, be there for any kind of advice or questions that they may have had on what to do. And then recently, she actually worked with Tom Clareson through WERN to secure the donation of boxes, Hollinger boxes, to the African American Military Museum, because they actually suffered major damage after a tornado in February. So that was the big tornado that came through for us, and unfortunately they were the only ones that were majorly affected. So she's been busy. And I just wanted to touch on the biggest lessons that we've learned from all of these workshops that we've had and training and instituting people as points of contact is that pretty much disaster preparedness is not going away. We need this. We need to all learn it. We need to be able to actually be better trained on it continuously. The training that we've already done is not it. We need to continue to do it far into the future and really understand that it's a major component of archival training now. It's not something that can just be sort of, skipped over or cross your fingers or anything like that. And for us in Mississippi, collaboration is really key. All of these different financing institutions and different archival organizations. All of us are really working together, and it's been imperative for making this successful. And also, it really helps that these workshops have been free for participants. Anytime it's free, that really helps people be able to attend them and to receive that training that is really desperately needed. It just makes it that much harder when there's a cost associated with it, when there's 100 different workshops that need to be attended and you can't go to all of them. So, but like I said, we still have a long way to go. So, thank you.